All right, we are recording. Oh, a good amount of people. All right. Oh, look at that. I know some people already. Jimena I had in class. So, yeah, thanks for everyone coming out. What questions do you have? What questions? Nothing?
Traditional national security.
Excellent beginning, because it's actually constructivism that starts saying, okay, what's traditional national security? That's just the state, right? And territory. When we start getting deeper into the class, we start stressing other things like meanings, ideas, norms. It's not just about territory and sovereignty, things like that. We'll get into like gender rights. There's just now national security, indigenous rights is a broader spectrum of issues. Excellent first question. So that basically is what that's about. And then when we get into like Dora Maria Tejas, if you've had me before, I talk about her a lot. That's an intersubjective understanding of terrorism. So it's not the traditional, whatever the state calls a terrorist is a terrorist. There's actually intersubjective terrorism where it's like, well, this person might be a terrorist to one country, but she is not in another, although she is now in the United States, which is ironic. So that's a pretty good question. Very good. What else? So you got two questions right there answered, basically. The idea Dora Maria Tejas is not a terrorist to everyone. And if you saw that picture of me and her, it was awful, very, very bad. So of me, mostly. What other questions do we have? Good beginning.
So non-traditional national security would be like gender rights and indigenous rights.
Right, things like that. But I don't ask that yet, not specifically. If you start looking down, we do a gender rights thing. In fact, behind me is, I didn't have you watch this one. I should, about prostitution. Should we legalize it or not? I did it in my political violence course. This is in Costa Rica, where I got a USA grant. And I did a little lecture there because actually it's prostitution is legal in Costa Rica, and would it decrease violence against women if we legalized it? But that's a different question. But yes, you are right. What else do we got on the table? Nothing?
Offensive realism.
Yeah, that's a good one. Offensive realism is basically the idea, and I will keep it on there, that states don't just defend themselves, they actually expand, regardless of ideology. I'm not sure if I put that lecture up early or not, but it'll be on there since you asked it, and taking it off as a question would be ridiculous because you want that point. It would be extra anyways. So it's basically the idea that states expand. Right? That's Mersheimer. And we get into him about the Ukraine, whether you agree with him that the Ukraine is actually somewhat attributable, the crisis, to the expansion of NATO. So those are two questions right there. Mersheimer's argument is states expand. That's offensive realism. Because the United States is expanding into the security apparatus, or you would say, into the sphere of influence of Russia, that actually contributed to Russia's invasion of the Ukraine. So offensive realism is just states expand, and the only way to stop the expansion is balancing. And actually, Mersheimer may see the invasion of the Ukraine as a balance. It wants the Ukraine as a buffer zone for the expansion of NATO. Excellent question. So those are two other questions we just hit. Sorry if you're in PETA, but like two birds with one stone. I know that's mean. Good. What
I was
else?
wondering.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was wondering if you could go over log rolling and your amazing article on Plan Colombia.
Yeah, that is basically the idea that in national security, states will say, we're involved in this attributable to national security concerns. But log rolling is when other entities, particularly economic ones, get involved. This comes up in all the debates on the Ukraine, for example. Is it Lockheed Martin and all these other groups who want us to spend money in order for them to sell things, right? or is it for national security concerns? In Plan Colombia, what you saw were a bunch of log rollers. That is simply stated economic players who have an interest in that policy. So it's economic influence, not necessarily national security, that influences national security policies. You see the big drone industry in Turkey and other countries that have really made a lot of money off the Azerbaijan, and we're doing a thing on it, my political violence, and the Armenian crisis, as well as the Ukrainian crisis. And Iran has made a lot of money off the Houthi crisis, where it's been sending drones. So these are economic players that are in the lead of national security. Good question. So that's on there. What else do we have?
Human security?
Human security is the idea of, like I kind of went over before, kind of breaks with the traditional security, where we deal with human beings and their security concerns, not just of the state. Good. Myanmar is going to be on there. What's that going to be? Anyone want to take a shot?
Is that like that's like about the Rohingya crisis and the documentary we watched?
Right. Very difficult documentary. I understand that, but it is national security. The way that question will be framed, good, Dan, is that, it involves all parts of national security. On the one hand, you have state actors, Myanmar. On the other hand, you have non-state actors, the Rohingya, if my pronunciation is correct. And third, you have neighboring states, Bangladesh. What do you do with these people? In one of my other classes, we talked about maybe giving them pieces of land, right, near the sea. But then obviously Myanmar doesn't want to give up that area, because then it gives you nautical mileage. So it's a very difficult, complicated situation. Should we get involved? I had that a question a while ago in one of my courses. Should we militarily intervene, the United Nations, in Myanmar? So that is basically all. Myanmar encompasses all these issues of national security. Good, good. What else? What else? I see a lot of questions here. Nothing
I was
else?
wondering if you could explain realists and purists.
Oh, that's good. That one's good. Let me see exactly the question, because I don't want to describe it in a way that's not in there. Let me see. Oh, compound warfare is on there. That is when the use of irregular forces such as Russia, Ukraine, and Lebanon. That was in the article. They actually used Hezbollah as an example. I really like that article, where it really focuses on the role of irregular forces. All countries use this. When I was in Nicaragua a while ago, you saw these irregular forces where they're like not the military in and of itself, but people may be paid, or maybe they really believe in the cause, etc. In fact, right now in Russia and the Ukraine, a lot of people don't know this, but the Ukraine is actually hiring people from Colombia, because after the peace process, you had all these ex-guerrilleros and military people that were fighting in Colombia, and now they have really not much going on for themselves in Colombia, so they are actually hired in Ukraine. Compound warfare is basically these irregular forces. I just wanted to stress that. The current crisis in the Persian Gulf, that's from that article of hybrid warfare. That dealt with like state actors, cyber warfare, non-state actors, etc. I'm looking for that purist one. I hope no one can see. Oh, yeah. That, I just want to make sure how I asked the question. So basically what you have to know in that question is how counterinsurgency and beyond that article, because I always change these questions around every year, reflects one of the approaches. So I'll ask you, what do you think that article, counterinsurgency and beyond, reflects, if you had to choose one? Because think of what the goal of they were trying to do, those agricultural people. Anyone want to take a shot? Barbara?
No, I actually had a question. with
Oh,
the
let's
period.
answer this
I have-
first, and then
Okay.
we'll get to the question. Thanks, Barbara. What do you think? Fusionist or purist in that article? You could just answer. It's not you're not gonna
I think it's fusionist because they were trying to win the hearts and minds, and not just like attack.
Yeah, excellent, Corinne. It is fusionist because they're agriculture. They're going to invest into agriculture, et cetera, et cetera. So it's not just military might; it's a different kind of soft power that these people are trying to do. And I believe it's the Missouri. What do you call the group again, Corinne? Who
Oh, the
remembers?
Missouri National Guard, I think.
Yeah, National Guard. It was National Guard. Good, Andrew. Good, Corinne. So so that would be a fusionist approach because that's one of the things in national security. It's like, do you just send bullets and guns? Is there a way to get soft power? And that's exactly what China's doing, Russia's doing, building up ports, building up, obviously we know what China is doing in Africa, Latin America. They're trying to create goodwill along with their own self-interest. So usually these nice things don't come, they usually come with strings attached and things like that. So you definitely in national security, you have to understand the role of soft power. In fact, Russia has been doing a really good job, and Putin is not paying me, unfortunately, to say this, at getting a lot of African nations on its side. And that's when we get into alliance building, when you see the video of me with an Angola thing where they want academics to go to Angola and build their soft power. Excellent stuff. So what else? What else do we have here? How would Cuban Missile Crisis in Estonia work here? What's the goal of that? Estonia, completely different language, area of the world, time, and the Cuban Missile Crisis. Why would they be wrapped up into one question?
They're about building allies. So Cuba Missile Crisis was about building allies, was allying themselves and balancing power with Russia. And then Estonia was with NATO versus Russia.
Yeah, and I want to just stress not just alliance, but more of a balance of power. So, definitely a balance of power. Cuba brought in Russia or Soviet Union at the time, and Estonia brings in NATO. Classic, balance of power move. Same what's going on now. Ukraine wouldn't survive without NATO and particularly the United States. Did we get to that debate yet? That's a good debate. Should we or should we not debate? Should we or should we not be supporting the Ukraine? Very interesting. I liked Trump's, well, I didn't like, but it was an interesting response Trump made where he just said, I want it to end. We should debate that sometime. All right. What about any other questions? Someone else was going to say something, I thought.
Professor, I don't have a content question, but more so a midterm format. I am anxious as hell because my first quiz that we took, I did a great job, way better than I thought. And then the second one, I only got half of the questions right. And it was shocking because I was like, the way I interpreted the questions, I don't know if I took it too vaguely or I was very, very confident in how I performed and it wasn't this, it was that. And I'm like, oh my God.
Right.
And so this midterm is coming up and I'm just really.
Yeah, don't stress too much. There's a lot of points in the class.
I know, but still.
Don't stress too much.
Like true or false, multiple
It's the
choice,
same
like,
format, and I don't say this to stress you out, but it's 1 point each opposed to 0.5. If you follow along here, you'll definitely do well. Get the logic of it, like what Corinne just said about the alliance. That's exactly what the Cuban Missile Crisis, Estonia. It's basically the idea is national security agendas transcend culture, time, and geography. They're doing the same thing regardless of their language, their time, their culture, their geography, etc. So there's something intrinsic to this balance of power type situation. So like if you kind of get that logic, like log rolling is about economic influence. Myanmar is about all of the neighbors, the non-state, the neighboring state. Get into kind of the logic of it, and you'll do fine. Like one article is, can Pompeo and Bolton coexist? We already know that's an older article, but I still use it because I think it's really interesting on the bureaucratic politics model, bureaucratic infighting, where you have people around the president, and it really depends on who wins these bureaucratic fights. And then for national security, that will be very, very important. So in that case, obviously, Pompeo won and Bolton was kicked out. So now Bolton hates Trump and Pompeo likes Trump. So, it's pretty interesting, like the more logical part that we can understand. So if you start looking, what's that article on the fusionist versus purist, counterinsurgency and beyond. That's a more fusionist approach because they're trying to win the hearts and mind. It's just not the Wagner group going out and killing people. They want to, win the hearts and minds. I think in a lot of countries we fail to do that. So try to get the gist of it. The current crisis of the Persian Gulf. That article, hybrid warfare, it's everything right there. It's non-state actors, state actors, cyber warfare, compound, etc. So the answer would be all of this is correct. So try to get into the logic of it, like constructivism. I said at one of the lectures at the beginning, meaning, ideas, norm. It's not just anarchy. It's not just a scientific understanding of the world. It brings in a lot of different things, so you got to see the logic. Like when I mentioned Vietnam, there's a lot of answers that are all are correct. I know that bothers people, but the goal I want them to understand is, like when I bring up Vietnam, Nicaragua, etc., it's asymmetric threats, counterinsurgency, invisibility, non-conventional power. Power is ambiguous by Morgenthau. That's one of the things that's really, really important to understand. Power is ambiguous. Right. So, right, if it says Vietnam, all those things, because I really harp on Vietnam. How was the Viet Cong, who Johnson called pajama people, able to defeat not only the United States, but in skirmishes with China, and then go into Cambodia and push out Pol Pot? I mean, pretty tough people. They use the guerrilla tactics, asymmetric threats, invisibility, non-conventional power, etc., very, very much to their own strategy. So good. What other Barbara, you had a question. So get the logic of all what we're talking about. Barbara?
No, it was just a question of fusionist. I was just gonna ask if you were
Okay.
asking about
But you understand it now? Fusionist is more using the military, not just for warfare activities, but quote unquote hearts and minds and things like that.
Yes.
All right. What else do we got? Asymmetrical terrorism. That really highlights the role of innovative attacks, right? Usually by an opposing force that's weaker than the bigger force. That's very, very important to understand. So when I went over that asymmetrical thing, that's what the videos on the Andino Mall and the other place, whatever slipped my mind, but you'll know when it's asked, because that's obviously more asymmetric attacks. The Central Andino bombing, right, was basically this kind of urban warfare, asymmetric attacks that is attributable to all those factors in asymmetrical warfare, invisibility, escape, etc. They don't really know who did it, although they want to think they know who did it, but it's an urban guerrilla group. What else? What else? Let me take a look here. That covers a lot that we just did in a short time. Han Morgenthau, national security and power. Power is ambiguous. Very important, just like Vietnam, just like Afghanistan. How did we lose Afghanistan, right? The Taliban made a lightning attack on the United States, but it did that on purpose. I want to put, this could be on the exam. So, even though I didn't cover it, that's called the weapon of the week. What happens is the Taliban saw an opportunity to rush the United States. And what did the United States leave in Afghanistan? And Trump brought it up, I believe.
Oh, was it all the military equipment?
Yeah, all that military equipment. So, that's what you call the weapons of the weak. Mao Zedong used to call Chiang Shek the best arms suppliers because they used to basically attack and ambush the more powerful entities, and then they would have their weapons. In fact, that's what they're nervous about the Ukraine. If Russia gets hold onto the Ukrainian weapons, then they're able to use them, and they also use the same language. In this case, the Taliban obviously isn't an English-speaking entity or German-speaking, but they'll learn how to use those weapons pretty soon. So that was one of the reasons why I believe they wanted to do a lightning fast takeover, is that the United States would then have to leave that equipment there, and then they could try to use it to their best abilities. Well, it wasn't about $7 billion. No offense to the Trumpers here, but I don't trust Trump when he speaks. I don't know how many people are eating cats, but he did bring up a number, Trump himself. I don't know if that was correct or not. But was it $7 billion? I mean, that's a lot of equipment. So they're able to use like at least half that. They can't use it. Don't worry, they'll figure it out. I just had cat right. Yeah, I get cat pizza. That's been a big thing now, huh? That's interpretive methods. Like, what is a terrorist? How people use those things. Trump getting almost assassinated, and then now the more recent one, that's what we call interpretive methods. Him pumping the fist is the image of him being strong. And then, in my opinion, he didn't do too well in the debate, so it might have deflated it. But the fact that he's pumping his fist, we're going to win, etc., is a very powerful image. And that's what more interpretive methods in national security looks at. Oh, I'll put that on there. What else? What other questions do we have?
The Colombian peace process and Plan Colombia.
Yeah, that's a good question. The peace process is about incorporating ex-combatants into society through creative ways after conflict. One of the problems I think with, and we're going to well, if you took the political violence, now it's in class. We do a bigger thing in this in political violence, but after conflict, what do you do with all these ex-combatants? That was a creative way to try to get these ex-combatants after the Colombian peace process not to go back to fighting. It's very difficult, and that should be a really big national security concern. And that's a problem. After Iraq, after Gaddafi fell, etc., where do these soldiers go? They often go to where conflict is and make it worse. So you really have to watch out for after post-conflict situations. Good. What else do we have? Oh, that's about it. We did Hans Morgenthau, counterinsurgency and beyond. Can Pompeo and Bolton coexist? Old article, but I love it because it reflects the bureaucratic politics model. Myanmar, Cuban Missile Crisis in Estonia, how this kind of idea of balance of power kind of transcends time, geography, etc. Log rolling, economic influences. Central Andino bombing, very interesting because it really captures all that asymmetric warfare. I mean, why bomb a nightclub it was, and then Centro Andino bombing. It's very difficult to find the people. Current crisis of the Persian Gulf, what that represents. Constructivism, that's, meaning, ideas, and norms. That's where you get kind of the more interpretive methods, where Dora Maria Tejas, is she a terrorist? It depends on where you sit. Vietnam, definitely asymmetric threats, invisibility, non-conventional power is ambiguous, like we talked about. Compound warfare, very important to these conflicts. Those are irregular forces. Go back to that article. Very good on Lebanon and Hezbollah. Hezbollah is actually a real power in Lebanon, but it has a military wing. And then we just did Colombian peace process, Dora Maria Tejas. Yeah, that's about it. Mearsheimer, offensive realism, states expand regardless of ideology, meaning it's a little different from defensive realism. Offensive realism is interesting because it presupposes that states kind of push out no matter what. So after the fall of the Soviet Union, the United States expanded to the world, and then you see Russia and China and other countries trying to balance it. That's how those people would think. Very good. What other questions do we have if something's not clear?
Can you go back over Hans Morgenthau? I think I missed it.
100%. Good question. He really focused. His book is a tome. It's very popular. I love it. Actually, it's not here. It's in my office. But for this class, power is ambiguous, right? He went through a long list. It is actually in the national security book if you did go to the library. But for the midterm, he went through all these ideas of what power is, right? Power is, national pride. Power is knowing a land. Power is industry. Power is all these different things. And in the end, power is actually ambiguous. How is it that the United States of America, the most powerful country in the world, woohoo, gets defeated in Vietnam, gets defeated in Afghanistan? All these things, how, why? Right? His argument is because power is sometimes not just about industry, guns, I'm the powerful person. There are other issues at stake. Like in Vietnam, and I think in Afghanistan, how long can you stay there, right? Until people start regrouping, they know the land. In fact, I used to give this documentary on the Taliban where they were in the middle of nowhere regrouping, and no one has it. In fact, we called the Afghan president the mayor of Kabul, people called him, because he had no power outside the major city. So like that fact that a lot of these developing countries, when you go outside the major capital, there's nothing there. These people are regrouping in order to come back. If this was like, before you were born 20 years ago, and I said, oh, the Taliban's going to come back, people would say you're insane, right? But how they did. So it's pretty interesting. How these things happen. And that's what Morgenthau stresses. He goes, watch out, power is ambiguous, right? You never know who has power. Is it hard to track down the groups or people that did the bombings? Yes. But yeah, invisibility. That's one of the things. When I lived in Nicaragua, I had all these former guerrillero soldiers, and they said like there'd be a student like you at night, and then like Corinne here, who I've had Corinne more than once, obviously, and Corinne would be a student in the day, and then she'd go blow up things at night. That's the thing with these invisibility, right? Like you're in some kind of country and you're in a dictatorship. So all these people here, Dan, Colleen, Jamie, here you are in a classroom, obviously not on Zoom. This was a long time ago. And then in the nighttime, you blow things up. Who is the enemy? It's very difficult to know who the enemy is. So yeah, that's invisibility. Very difficult to root out insurgency groups because you never know who's in the insurgency group. They're regular people. When they get bigger, like the FARC, then okay, they have a command, they have uniforms. Then it comes to be more like a conventional war. But when it's like these smaller groups and they finally overthrow the government, it's very difficult. Like the Viet Cong, very difficult to know who these people are. So yeah, very good thing, Lucas. What else do we have? Any other questions or comments on all this stuff?
Can you go over specifically whether or not the test is going to have a variation of like multiple choice, short answer, fill in the blank?
Multiple choice. These classes fill up, particularly mine. If I ever did fill in the blank, I would get like 4,000 emails within a day because they'd be, oh, I spelt it wrong. Well, I mean, that's fair enough. I'm a terrible speller. So I just do multiple choice. The writing practice is at the end when we do our papers. Good question.
I was wondering if you could go over the military-industrial complex.
I don't ask about that, but there is a military industrial academic complex and you're in it. The United States has a lot of money. The military and Crow, of course, being at ASU wants a piece of that pie. So the military industrial complex is that, Lockheed Martin, my father, when I was a little kid, worked at Raytheon, not even a big position, but he made a lot of money doing it. The military has a lot of money. So, these entities start lobbying. I think Raytheon now moved to Virginia outside of Massachusetts. So they start lobbying the government. But now the academic world is in on it. And I would call it the military industrial academic complex, which Eisenhower actually told us to watch out for. Good question. but not on the midterm. What else do we got here? Any other questions or comments?
What about terrorism, U.S. centric topic?
Yeah,
Concept?
that's exactly the intersubjective terrorism. Dora Mendieta who I know. You saw the picture of me, and you've seen it, Corinne, a few more times than everyone else. Is a terrorist for the United States. She can't get in the country, and then, even though she's a hero to her own country. So you got to watch out for that too, because in national security, people will say, "Oh, this person is a hero," like we see in Venezuela, right? Juan Guaido before is going to take over Venezuela. He wasn't very popular. You got to kind of understand that just because the United States likes someone or Russia or someone else, that doesn't mean they're popular in their own country. So in this case, it would be terrorism, like an intersubjective understanding of terrorism is the idea that terrorism in and of itself, right, is intersubjective. So what is a terrorist? The government of Venezuela now calls the protesters terrorists because they want to overthrow them. They find these weapons. To us, no, they're just protesting, etc. We have to understand that in order to understand national security. Because you don't know, you have to kind of gauge to a certain degree the popularity of these different groups. We called the Viet Cong terrorists, but apparently they were very popular. They overthrew the government in the South, and we got kicked out. And then they kicked out Pol Pot in Cambodia. Geez, that's amazing that they were able to kick us out and then go and then kick Pol Pot out in Cambodia. Good question. What else do we got here? Who's got a good question?
Conventional terrorism?
Conventional terrorism is like one-on-one. That's a good question. I should focus more on, it's not on here. But conventional terrorism, warfare is exactly what I think is happening in the Ukraine and Russia. You have just two countries and fighting, who's who to a certain degree. And it's come to a stalemate, a little like World War I, unless someone wants to disagree with that and say one side is winning the war. Who's winning the war in that one? Nobody? I don't know. I'm asking. That's why who you think is winning. It seems like it's getting a stalemate-ish in that. What else? What other questions do we got?
National security's evolving definition and how national security has evolved are like the last two evidence.
Yeah, it's evolved quite a bit. Sorry, on my thing. I would say national security has evolved significantly since the Cold War, where it was just about bipolar balance of power, even though I think balance of power still uses. It evolves over time. So when 9/11 happens, now it's a focus on terrorism. Then, we got the invasion of the Ukraine. Oh, it's back to state on state. Then we have cyber warfare. I'll save that for the second half of the class because I actually do artificial intelligence and national security, cyber security, and different things. It's national security is an interesting entity, phenomena, because it just doesn't stay the same. It's not fixed. So I taught a class, statistics in national security, where you take a statistical approach. It's always evolving over time. Good question, but not on the midterm. What other? This also, don't forget, these will make great papers. Let me finish by this. The paper you should do should be something. Maybe I'll ask a question on the exam that you can maybe use later. Like if you want to go to law school, you can go to law and national security. Legal issues. Julian Assange, should he be in prison? Anything with the law and national security will be a great paper. I want to stress. If you want to go to law, you don't have to. You can do a fun paper. Do something that interests you, but do something that might help you in the career. You want to work for the State Department? Do the State Department and national security or something. Diplomacy and national security. Something like that. Because everything you're bringing up, Corinne, would make an awesome paper. Like the whole development of national security. What else do we have? Any other questions, comments?
So I forget
From the election.
What,
What, Andrew?
Sorry.
Sorry.
How long does the paper have to be?
I think it's on the thing. I think this class is 6 pages, but I don't want to see because I need the syllabus in front of me. And usually I don't recommend looking at the syllabus because it's chaotic. But yeah, about 6 pages. It's not that long. I used to have 12 pages, but then it was like too long and no one. 6 pages, 5 pages is good because that's what they usually ask for. So I'm glad you brought that up. That's what they usually ask for a sample paper. So like, let's say, for example, you want to do an internship in national security. This will be a good sample paper. Good question. What else? Any other question? Who's going to win the election? No one knows.
So I was just going to ask about the quiz.
Yeah.
So we have the quiz, and then after the quiz, then we have the midterm, or is that the midterm, that thing?
The midterm. What do you mean, the quiz and the midterm? Could you repeat that, Dan? I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. Yeah. So it's like there's like a quiz due tomorrow, but that's not the midterm, right?
No, that's not the midterm. The midterm you should watch. You might want to wait because I might put that up a little later. The quiz, that's just the last quiz for the first part of the semester. The midterm is already, it's not open, but it's still published and you can see it. It's got so many points. The midterm is under module midterm exam on the first, and it opens and it's opens tomorrow. Hey, I can open it tonight if you want it open tonight. If someone wants to just take it right after this, I can open it tonight. And then it's due about the 22nd. So you have a good amount of time to do it.
Cool. All right. Thank you.
There's about 18 points. Don't stress too much because the final has a ton of points. It's got like 30 points when it's only supposed to have 20. So, don't stress too much. Stress can be bad for our health. What other question? Oh, what are the big key differences? I would say traditional national security is the idea that like 2 states going to war. Now I should put something on it. Where you have state-centric battles. The Middle Eastern wars were basically more traditional. I see the Ukraine and the Russian war. You people do not have to agree with me. You can debate me on it as being a little more traditional. In fact, there hasn't been as much cyber warfare even in that they thought. Non-traditional national security and war. First, non-traditional, unconventional warfare is more asymmetrical warfare, invisibility, escapability, everything that I talked about. The woman, if you remember, holding a Aka. I think she's breastfeeding at the time. I think that's one of the pictures I have. I'm not sure if it's in this class. I got it in one of the classes. I can send it out. But more guerrilla warfare is non-traditional national security and warfare. And now you see the rise of using sanctions. Is that non-traditional security? Oh, we're going to put sanctions on Venezuela, on Iran, on North Korea, on Russia. Do they work? I mean, kind of more non-traditional things. I do ask questions about I don't know if I do it on the midterm. I don't think I ask anything about that on my midterm. Yeah, good question. Because like this behind me, and yeah, I always do that. That's good. What else? What else do we have? Anything else?
Would the Israel-Palestine conflict be more non-traditional, you think?
That's a good debate on it. I don't want to get too bogged down. We have a debate on that, right? Correct me if I'm wrong in this class. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, I think we do.
Yeah, because I have one in my political violence course, and I want to make sure. Yeah. What do you think? It's like Gaza versus Israel. Is it? But did you see? Actually, I don't know if that video's up yet. The whole Gaza where they're going through the tunnels and everything. Very, very unconventional on the part of Hamas, which built incredible tunnels. And I'm not taking a side on the war. I'm just saying, yeah, I think that might be asymmetrical, Andrew. But is the war itself asymmetrical? Or is it a mix like that article on the Persian Gulf War? That's an interesting phenomena. The amount of the walls that those people, the tunnels that they built are incredible. And I don't say that I'm not taking a side of the war or anything. That's for you people when we debate. but that they built were amazing. It's just like the Viet Cong, or under the border walls in different countries when we try to put up border walls. Very interesting war. I don't want to get too bogged down on that. You people, I can't wait to see those debates. Any other questions or comments? And I think when we say traditional, non-traditional, asymmetrical, conventional, I think a lot of the warfares mix it up. That's why I really like that article on the Persian Gulf, kind of hybrid warfare, because I think that's what we have to focus on. It's not just going to be conventional. There'll be, everything from now artificial intelligence you're going to be reading about, irregular forces, these tunnels we just talked about, etc. Well, let me tell you something, Andrew. Open or closed book. If I can see what you're doing at your home, you're really in trouble beyond this exam. So you can open your book, unless you want me at your house watching you. They told me I can't do that. I used to go house to house watching people, make sure they didn't open the book. No, of course you can open the book, but this is more logical. Like when one of you asked about the exam, it's a logic-based exam. Like, well, what was the purpose of this article? What was, the professor talked about Vietnam. What does Vietnam represent? Well, that's, asymmetrical warfare, right? So it's not really, I don't think a book in and of itself is very as helpful as just understanding the logic. And that's what the LSAT and all these other things are about. It's about understanding the logic of these questions and answers. In my opinion. I don't know. I don't take the test. You do. Maybe they're illogical. What else do we have? Any other questions or comments?
Are any of the questions more than one answer is correct?
You hate those?
Oh, no, I don't mind.
Everybody hates them. That's why I put them on there. In this test, trust me, most will be all is correct, because one of the things I want you to understand is like key terms. So like Vietnam, okay, that's invisibility, that's asymmetrical warfare, that's escapability, etc. Oh, we read an article, the Persian Gulf hybrid article. Okay, that was compound warfare, cyber warfare, irregular forces, yada, yada, yada. So I want you to understand the broad spectrum of issues that everything we talked about. So I mean, I'm not just telling that. It's not just about getting something correct. I want you to understand that I want you to understand, like, okay, this article encompasses all those different factors. We talked about this. This includes all of these factors. So there is a method to the madness. It's not to kind of, I'm not saying you said this because you didn't, but like, it's not to get anyone, it's the goal is to kind of understand that all of these things are very important for national security. What other questions do we have? Well, if that's it, we can end there. Any questions about final paper? Life, liberty, happiness? Too bad we're not going to be in this class when the election happens. Will there be violence? Will it be a national security threat on some of these things? That's going to be a good question.
I have a question.
Nicaragua after the meeting. You can ask me a question about Nicaragua. What else?
Can you submit, this is for the debates, can you submit a response before you submit your original debate?
Yeah, you can. I always check it because I think, are they trying to? Because sometimes they accidentally, I don't know, accidentally put up both the same for both. Yeah, you can do whatever you want. It's your body, your choice. You basically can do a rebuttal to anyone on anything you want to talk about. Not anything you want to talk about, on any debate. Any person. So like, I didn't do it on the Ukraine, but I want to debate Barbara, for example. Do it respectfully, obviously, but then you can debate anyone. So yeah, you can do it that way. And if you didn't get it up, you miss a date, someone emailed me, a few people kind of freaking out. Don't worry at all. There's more space with the debates. I mean, we're not like an in-class venue. So, I mean, if you get it up a few days after, a week after, no one's going to die, right? So, get up your debate, whatever you want, whichever one you want. What else do we got? Good question. Anything else? All right, then I'll stop it here, the recording, so it's not two things. And then